The Interstellar Antiquarian Society was an august body, its members drawn from species whose lifespans stretched across millennia, who measured history in epochs rather than centuries. They were the galaxy's chroniclers, its archaeologists, its keepers of deep time. To them, humanity was a flash in the pan, a mayfly civilization, energetic, certainly, perhaps even charmingly naive, but ultimately fleeting. Human history, barely a few thousand years of recorded activity by galactic standards, was dismissed as a collection of unreliable myths, tribal folklore, and exaggerated self-importance. Their focus on the present, their short individual lifespans, their seemingly shallow cultural memory, all pointed to a species incapable of true long-term thinking or grasping the profound currents of galactic history. Archivist Lorien, a being of crystalline structure whose thoughts moved with glacial deliberation, was cataloguing finds from the recently excavated ruins on Xylos Prime. The planet was believed to have been a minor outpost of the long-extinct Caithnar hegemony, a precursor civilization that had vanished some 50,000 standard years ago. The Caithnar pottery shards show standard early expansion motifs. Lorien communicated via resonant chimes to his colleagues. No significant deviations. Another data point confirming their brief, unremarkable tenure in this sector. As for the human claims of artifacts predating their own interstellar travel found on nearby worlds, likely misinterpretations, contamination, wishful thinking from a young race eager for deeper roots. This was the society's polite, if dismissive, consensus. Humans were simply too new, too ephemeral to have any real, undiscovered ancient past. The trigger for a galactic re-evaluation came not from a grand discovery, but from a dusty, overlooked data crystal recovered from deep within the Xylos Prime ruins. It was found in a sub-basement, far below the Caithnar strata, encased in a material that initially defied society dating techniques. It was catalogued as anomalous object 734 alpha and set aside, presumed to be a geological formation or a piece of unusually resilient Caithnar refuse. It was only when a junior society intern, a young FNAR named Pip, idly ran a new experimental deep scan analysis on 734 alpha that its true nature began to emerge. The crystal wasn't Caithnar. It wasn't geological. It was a sophisticated data storage device, and its internal chronometers, once painstakingly deciphered, indicated an age that made the society's eldest members pause. A minimum of 2 million standard years. Impossible, declared High Archivist Threll, a being whose lifespan had witnessed the rise and fall of several minor spacefaring races. No known civilization of that antiquity possessed this level of data compression technology. The Caithnar were barely fashioning crude tools 2 million years ago. Pip, nervous but insistent, displayed the initial decrypted data fragments. They weren't in Caithnar script, nor any known precursor language. They were in a language that was disturbingly, shockingly familiar. An archaic, foundational dialect of what would, millennia later, evolve into one of Earth's earliest known languages. It was unmistakably human. The Antiquarian Society was thrown into a state of profound intellectual shock. This single crystal, if authentic, would shatter every established timeline of galactic history. The Society's most venerable linguists, historians, and xenoarchaeologists converged, their initial skepticism slowly giving way to a dawning, incredulous awe as more of the crystal's contents were unlocked. The archive was vast. It wasn't the record of a struggling primitive species. It was the sober, detailed, and often sorrowful chronicle of a type III galactic civilization, a civilization that called itself man. A civilization that had risen, expanded, and governed a significant portion of the galaxy millions of years ago. The crystal detailed their sciences, which dwarfed current galactic understanding. It spoke of interstellar engineering projects that reshaped star systems, of art forms that manipulated spacetime itself, of philosophical inquiries that touched upon the very nature of reality. And it spoke of their role not as conquerors, but as custodians. Shepherds. The oh shit revelation wasn't just that humans were ancient. It was the reason for their current, seemingly primitive state. The archive spoke of recurring, cyclical existential threats to the galaxy, some cosmic, some self-inflicted by younger, brasher species, some from dimensions beyond normal spacetime. And each time, this ancient human civilization had acted, not always openly, often subtly, guiding events, absorbing blows, making immense sacrifices to shield the burgeoning life in the galaxy. And then, the most chilling part. After each major intervention, when the galaxy was safe but often scarred, these ancient humans would deliberately, systematically, dismantle their own advanced civilization. They would retreat to a designated seed world, of which Earth was only the most recent, and allow themselves to regress, to forget, preserving only faint echoes of their true history in myths, legends, and what current humanity considered their instincts or inexplicable talents. They called it the long sleep or the silent watch. The archive entry that caused the most profound horror and awe among the society members was titled, Regarding the Necessity of Forgetting and the Burden of Unseen Guardianship. It detailed the psychological toll of immense power and longevity, the dangers of stagnation, and the agonizing decision that true stewardship sometimes required the shepherd to appear as a simple sheep, to allow new growth unburdened by the shadow of an overwhelming predecessor. Earth isn't a cradle, whispered archivist Lorien, his crystalline structure resonating with a new, terrifying understanding. It's a fallow field, a place they retreat to regrow themselves after what? The Caithnar, the archive mentioned them in passing. A minor, aggressive species in the Perseus arm, required gentle pruning to prevent premature pangalactic conflict. See Appendix 7. Sublight Stellar Engine Disruption Strategies. The Caithnar hegemony hadn't just died out. They had been subtly guided towards collapse by these ancient humans for the greater good of the galaxy. Humanity's current myths, tales of godlike beings, of great floods and fiery skies, of forgotten golden ages, were suddenly cast in a new, terrifying light. They weren't fantasies. They were fragmented, deeply eroded memories of their own incomprehensibly vast past, echoes of previous cycles of civilization and self-imposed regression. Their inexplicable knack for rapid technological advancement when pushed, their deep-seated resilience, their almost insane stubbornness in the face of overwhelming odds, these weren't traits of a young species. They were the ingrained habits of an ancient one, forged over millions of years of galactic shepherding. The human tendency for self-sacrifice, so often noted by other species as puzzling or illogical, now made a horrifying kind of sense. It was the echo of a species that had, countless times, sacrificed its own grandeur for the sake of the galaxy. Their ability to reset, their civilization wasn't a failing. It was a deliberate, unimaginably patient strategy. High Archivist Threll, after weeks of silent contemplation of the archive, addressed the stunned society. We have judged humanity by the length of one of their lives, by the span of their current memory. We were fools. We are the mayflies, buzzing around a mountain that has slumbered and is perhaps only now beginning to stir. We have been studying the ripples on the surface of an ocean, utterly unaware of the leviathan that dwells in its depths. The aftermath of this revelation was a seismic shift in the galactic understanding of, well, everything. All accepted histories were now suspect. Ancient ruins were re-examined with a new, desperate question. Were they here too? Humanity, the young race, was suddenly the oldest, most experienced, and potentially most dangerous intelligence in the galaxy. News of the Xylos Prime Archive, carefully controlled by the Society at first, inevitably began to leak. The initial reaction from the wider galaxy was disbelief, then ridicule. But as the Society released more verified, cross-referenced data, a creeping sense of cosmic awe, mixed with no small amount of dread, began to spread. Human diplomats, utterly bewildered by the sudden, intense scrutiny and deference they were receiving from species that had previously dismissed them, found themselves at the center of urgent galactic inquiries. "What do you remember?" they were asked. "What are your oldest legends really about?" The greatest fear, the question that now haunted the sleep cycles of 1,000 species, was, why did they let us forget them? What are they currently guarding against? and what will happen when they decide the long sleep is over. Humanity itself was thrown into a profound existential crisis and an unprecedented period of self-discovery. Their historians and archaeologists, armed with clues from the Xylos archive, began to unearth subtle, previously unnoticed evidence of their own deep antiquity on Earth and their colony worlds. Ancient, impossibly advanced artifacts mistaken for natural formations, genetic markers that hinted at forgotten manipulations, whispers in their oldest folklore that now sounded less like myth and more like heavily distorted history. The Interstellar Antiquarian Society, once the galaxy's gatekeepers of the past, now found themselves as humble students, poring over the records of a species they had so thoroughly underestimated. The new legend spreading through the stars was not of humanity's youth, but of their terrifying, patient, and cyclical ancientness. They were the silent watchers, the shepherds of cycles, and the galaxy held its breath, wondering what their next dawn would bring.